business, and I just wanted to know, because it's something I hadn't thought about, but this whole idea of the invisibility, you know, whenever we go to the gas station, there's always gas. And whenever we go to the light switch, it always turns on, there's always energy. But we don't really understand what is behind, like what goes into making all of that happen, seemingly so effortlessly. And to me, it's almost part of the ploy, if you like, of the energy industry. I don't know, this idea of the hydrocarbon myth, what does it mean to you?
Well, I mean, this kind of gets in a way to one of the things that I was talking about at the beginning. Actually, I was writing about invisibility, and we're trying to make visible what's, generally speaking, invisible. Oil's underground, and you don't see it from the point when it goes out from the ground into your gas tank. And because it's invisible, you don't kind of know what the costs are as well. And so, you know, one of the things that's strange is people say, like, well, you know, you don't know when you go to a gas station where the oil comes from, because it's impossible to trace from its origin. But actually, it's not impossible to trace from its origin. There's a reporter for the Chicago Tribune named Paul Salatek who did a wonderful series about a year and a half ago, where actually he was able to go to his local gas station and then do some, you know, investigative research and figure out where the gasoline that he was pumping into his car actually came to. And so this is one of the ways that it can be effective. If you're looking for kind of like solutions to make Americans more aware and to use some of the information in the stories that Ed and I have, you can actually, if you kind of get the information which is there, you can make it possible for people to know about the sourcing of their gasoline, which could, and I don't know what effect it would have, but it could actually be quite profound. Because remember, like, the reason people started boycotting Nike tennis shoes or khaki different t-shirts is because they found out these things are made in sweatshops, or these things are made in unfair conditions. And so if you can also make it very clear kind of where the pipeline begins, not just where it ends, I don't know what effect that would have on consumers, but it could have like a good effect, so that hydrocarbons become visible in their entirety, not just kind of in the end result, that is, they go into our cars and they propel us down the road.
What do you guys think of that? Do you care where your energy comes from? Do you think about it?
Very interesting thought. I'd love to know which are the more ethical gas stations to go to. Like, obviously Shell Oil, you don't want to go there. But are there certain oil companies that actually source their products in a better way than others?
I mean, not that I'm aware of, and not U.S. companies. Let's say, you know, unlike Peter, my experience is very much concentrated in one place. But Statoil, which is a Norwegian company, seems to have the best reputation. But, well, I'll digress here, but I have to say, I don't really, at least in the Niger Delta, I don't blame the oil companies. To me, it's really the Nigerian government that are the people to blame, if you like. The oil companies are doing business. It's the government who's responsible for its people, for its resources, for its land, its environment, for the distribution of the profits so that it helps the people. And that is not the oil company's responsibility. So granted, the oil companies could do a much better job, but I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but at least in the Niger Delta, to me, it's a really dramatic, blatant example of what happens when you do not have government that serves the people, that is not for the people. Which is why I have a lot of problem with tax cutters in this country.
You cannot excuse the oil companies entirely. Governments are very corrupt, and governments are working with the oil companies, and governments are working with the oil companies of the companies from whatever country they come from. So, you know, government, of course, they should protect the people of their own nations. And they're very corrupt. I mean, I'm from Pakistan. Every government in Pakistan is most corrupt. Maybe there's no oil there, but
I'm going there Wednesday.
But you cannot just like say, oh, they're doing business. No, they are plundering the resources of the human beings.
Well, I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I am not an apologist for the oil companies.
No, I know.
No, but I know when I started this project, I thought, the oil companies, they're the devils here. And I guess, as I always learn, once I report on anything, it's never so black and white and so simple. And, you know, ultimately, I mean, the Nigerians are incredibly smart people and, you know, resourceful and entrepreneurial, but somehow, I mean, to me, it's that oil makes so much damn money, it just corrupts everyone that comes into contact with it. So it's very hard I understand how like these government ministers and so forth, it's just hard not to get corrupted by this. And what happens is the oil companies, like you're sort of saying, the government, they kind of are in collusion. This, you know, where nobody really does their job the way they should be doing it, but they laugh all the way to the bank.
Billions of dollars, their money.
Billions of dollars.
Like,
Yeah.
what are we talking about?
Yeah.
You can never correct. You have to correct the source, and otherwise the government's working for them, and they have no, you know, the right to know.
One of the ways that I tried to delve into this, one aspect of it was, in 2003, there was a guy named Jim Giffen who was arrested at John F. Kennedy Airport, charged with $80 million of bribery in Kazakhstan. He was, Jim Giffen, the right-hand man to the Kazakh president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, and had been his right-hand man for like a decade, negotiating contracts on behalf of the Kazakh government with American oil companies. And when he was indicted, I said to myself, oh, this is the guy I really want to talk to. He was immediately let out on $10 million bail. He had no trouble meeting that bail. Because this was somebody who was at the center of kind of the whole issue, kind of money and profit and corruption and whatnot. And so what I did was, because I knew that just writing about the case would be very difficult to bring kind of like alive. It would be very dry very quickly. So I went one morning down to the federal courthouse in downtown Manhattan to a process hearing where he was going to be present. I knew he was going to be present. I got there early, and there he was when the elevator doors opened, and he's surrounded by like 4 lawyers. And I go up to him, and kind of before his lawyers, who are all on their BlackBerries, have a chance to kind of like realize that their client is talking to a journalist. I introduce myself and say, Peter Maass from the New York Times. I'm working on a book about oil. I really want to talk to you. And Giffen looks at me, and he says, well, are you focusing on what the governments do about oil? And I said, yes, of course. And by then the lawyers kind of had woken up and kind of, you know, almost kind of blocked me away and said, you can't talk to our client. But then I kind of got their cards, whatever. I said, okay, fine. Call the lawyers in the next couple of days, talk with them, and they said, look, our client can't talk to you. He's just been indicted for $80 million. Just no way. And I said, look, just send him a letter. I'm going to send you an email with a letter from me. Send it to him. Here's some clips of mine. Send them to him. And let him make the decision. He's your client. He's paying your bills. And this is kind of one of these crazy things. I think Ed and I, you know, are somewhat obsessive. We do a heck of a lot of reporting. We reach out to a lot of people. And 99 out of 100 times, what you're really looking for, the magical kind of, you know, door unlocking doesn't happen. But about 2 weeks later, my phone rings. And I pick it up. And the voice on the line says, this is Jim Giffen, and this conversation isn't happening. And I say, right, it's not. Okay. And we then start talking, and it's off the record. And at the end of about 2 hours of talking, I say to him, look, you know, there's still so much. I really don't understand. You know, can I come to your office? Because he still had his office on Park Avenue then. And he said, okay, sure, come to my office. Don't tell my lawyers. And then I go to his office a week or so later, and I talk with him. And I kind of keep going back to his office a number of times. And in the end, kind of I developed this relationship with him where he trusts me and he says, okay, you can write about some of this in your book. And the key thing, and the reason I'm telling this story relating to kind of like this issue, and the reason that kind of like it worked for me narratively, is because the reason that Giffen, and it's now 2009, he was indicted in 2003, the reason his trial hasn't happened yet is because he's mounting what's called a public authority defense. He's not actually kind of denying the charges against him that he siphoned $80 million into his own pockets and the pockets of the president of Kazakhstan. His defense is, I was working with the CIA. They knew all about this. I had the permission of the American government to do it. And the reason that he kind of, and if this sounds very kind of Syriana to you, you know, I don't know if how many of you saw the movie, but you know, it's about oil and corruption. One of the characters is this kind of slightly dodgy lawyer character there who kind of gives this very famous little speech, at least to kind of people who watch oil movies, about corruption, how it keeps us warm, it's why we win. That character is actually based on Giffen. And the hilarious thing is that I know about that because Giffen pointed that out to me. You know, he said kind of like this very dodgy lawyer character is based on me. He was proud of it because the point he was making is that, look, you know, the oil companies and the businessmen who work for them who make the deals, yes, you know, they're profit-oriented and they want to make the money that they can. But they're also linked to governments that are encouraging them and helping them. So that's kind of, you know, part of the overall system, which is very kind of damaged and imperfect, obviously, that, you know, we try to somehow bring alive and make real.
Thank you. There's a question.
I have a question for Ed.